Hello. It me. So I know it's been quite some time since my last real video, but a week ago, Jack Stauber, who's the artist responsible for making the funny white girl song, released Opal, an animated short in the style of his previous works like Shop or Cooking with Abigail. Unlike those shorts, however, Opal takes on a much darker tone with its subject matter, animation, and songs, which I'll get to in a second. But before I can do any of that, this video contains discussions of domestic abuse, so for those of you who are sensitive to that subject, you are more than welcome to click away. Also, if you haven't seen Opal yet, you should probably go and do that, because, I mean, it's pretty good. So the short begins on a tracking shot of a poorly kept house with a calm piano accompaniment playing in the background. Then the song gets louder and more exciting as we're shown three things: cigarettes, mirrors, and intoxicants. This is called foreshadowing. You know, how a storyteller's supposed to fucking make you think that shit's coming later. Then we see a burger followed by the charming yet fucking terrifying faces of Opal's family. They begin singing to Opal about how they are there to take care of her and that her troubles are miles away. Emphasis on the air quotes there. Opal begins to try to pick up the burger, which isn't a very hard fucking task, I'll remind you. And as she picks it up, she begins to dance on the plate. Weirdly enough, her grandpa only replies in "Hi, Opal," which is a fairly accurate parallel to how Joe Biden will address the American people halfway through his term. Then she sees it. The house across the street. Her mother shuts the curtains and her father tells her to stay away from the house and that her attention shouldn't be focused on it to begin with. You know, because that's not totally fucking suspicious at all. Later in the day, Opal sneaks out of bed and walks to the window that shows the house. She looks at it and begins to hear cries coming from the window. Although I kind of think that looks like what happens when you come out of a window at high velocity. She walks to the house and goes in, seeing a fat old man in a living room filled with trash. As she attempts to leave, she steps on a crumply piece of trash and the old man— oh fuck, why did he have to turn around so fast? He's fucking terrifying! Why do his lips move like that? Sorry. Anyways, he asks Opal to bring him his cigarettes. You know, that thing that they showed in the opening because subtlety. But weirdly addresses him by Claire, which is important for the rest of the video, so remember that. As she walks over to pick them up off the floor, the old man coughs up blood like me after a night in San Francisco, if you know what I'm saying, eh? And begins to sing the greatest thing ever— a song that is hinting that the old man has no idea that the frequency in which he smokes is starting to kill him. After this number, the old man notices that Claire's, scent is off. He sees, or doesn't see, depending on how you interpret the look of his glasses, that this isn't Claire, and tries to chase her out of the house, but instead falls and hits his face on the floor. What a fucking dipshit. Claire runs off and hears more cries coming from the door ahead of her. As she attempts to walk over there, she's stopped by a man sitting in a room full of mirrors. Again, hinted in the opening because, you know, subtlety. And he begins ranting about the way that people often view him negatively and how he's always trying to fix something about the way he looks. A sentiment I can relate to. He sings a song about how he began isolating himself in this reflection chamber to fix himself, again emphasis on air quotes, and how he's confident in the progress he's made. As the song ends, the old man manages to get up the stairs and screams loudly, causing Opal to run to the spooky ghost room. She begins walking towards the attic stairs until a hand suddenly emerges and pulls her to the floor. This hand belongs to the middle-aged woman who appears to be extremely inebriated. Again, intro. Subtlety. She tells Opal that the state in which she lives in has gotten out of control and that she feels guilty about something that she's done, but stops short of saying what it actually is. She lays down and begins singing the most terrifying song in the entire short, with this subtle descending piano playing over these dissonantly sung lyrics, which capture how lonely but terrifyingly unpredictable she is. The music rises and we're shown— subtly, I'll remind you, that this woman has been physically abusing somebody who's presumably Claire. After this song ends, she tells Opal that she is just as powerless as she is, before attempting to hurt her. Opal runs away and up the attic stairs, locking herself in and holding the door with a chair. As the commotion from outside grows, Opal walks to the window, revealing that her house is gone, and in its place is a billboard that features her family, which reads Opal's Burgers. She begins to step back and sees visions of herself in the eyes of the old man, as the mirror of the man in the reflection chamber, and as the pills that the woman was taking. As this happens, she screams and closes her eyes. Then we again see the family, who is singing a reprise of the song from the beginning. The camera pans out of this figment of Opal's imagination as the Grotesque family pounds on the door trying to get in. So that was pretty fucked up, but what does it all mean? Well, as it turns out, Opal is actually Claire, and the family we see throughout the short isn't her real family. She lives in a physically abusive and neglectful household in which her father isn't present and obsesses over himself, her grandfather is barely mobile and slowly deteriorating because of his addiction to cigarettes, leaving Claire to deal with her constantly inebriated and physically abusive mother, who convinces her that she is helpless and that she can't escape the nightmare she's putting her through. As a result, she turns to the fantasy of a normal, loving household as a means of escaping her family. This particularly hit me like a brick because I've been extremely close to people who have been through this sort of nightmare of domestic abuse, and while I was never physically or mentally hurt by anybody in my family, there was a time where I would escape into my own head to avoid facing routine bullying and emotional trauma from a past romantic partner of mine. Look, I know this channel, for the most part, has been dedicated to making comedic and enjoyable content, but for once I need to get serious. If you or somebody you know is in an abusive household, please contact these numbers. In the case of an emergency, please call 911 or the emergency number within your country. You are not alone, you do not deserve this, and there is a way out. So, back to the analysis. Now you might be saying,
what makes you think that, Kejjin? How does somebody who plays a rapper with Down syndrome analyze something like this?
And my response to that is, that's really mean. Fuck, I actually made myself cry. But anyone with a working pair of eyes can tell that this is the direction that Jack Homeless Man Stauber wanted to go with his story. There are hints scattered everywhere, as well as some fairly obvious ones throughout the short. For example, the mother and the father both unmistakably identify Claire from the get-go, the only one questioning her identity happening to be the presumably blind grandfather. There's also the fact that the house that Claire believes she lived in is not actually there, and when the short ends, the camera zooms out from her brain, implying that the family is only a figment of her imagination. This short is also from Claire's perspective for the majority of it, until the reveal of the sign outside her window. Which is also a sign! Afterwards, we see the real world around her, or as real as it gets with Jack Hipster Gandalf Stauber at the helm. There are various other things that I could get into, but I suggest rewatching the short for yourself to find the more finer details. I'll link it in the description so you can easily get to it. But for now, let's get into the music. Guys, I have a confession. I love Jack modern-day Tim Burton Stauber's music. Okay, I'll stop using that bit now. As someone who listens predominantly to Elliott Smith, Nick Drake, Grouper, Red House Painters, Have a Nice Life, Radiohead, Sparkle Horse, and Bright Eyes, yes, I did check my Spotify to write this down, it's not often that my tastes meld with something that isn't completely fucking soul-sucking. But Jack Stauber is one of the very few exceptions to that rule. His music is weird in a way that's delightful and a lot of fun to listen to. His production style reminds me of something from the early 80s with a slightly modern twist, or as my dad would put it, a Talking Heads ripoff. Things like reverb and delay are present within his music, but they usually go as fast as they come in. Jack Stauber also tends to utilize a lot of very strange vocal inflections when he sings, which just sort of adds to the lighthearted feeling of all of his tracks. When the songs meld with his visual design, it's like I'm watching Wallace and Gromit on the CRT while Talking Heads is playing away in the background. The soundtrack to Opal is different in that the music is meant to coincide with the theme of the short, rather than the inverse. What I mean is that Shop, Jack's previous Adult Swim short, was tied together mostly by the songs made for it. All of the songs were made with the concept of a grocery list in mind, and the animated segments were written around it. But with Opal, the music was written concurrently with the story, and therefore feels a lot more connected to the project. This doesn't mean that the songs feel out of place when disconnected from the material, though. These songs are honestly amazing to listen to by themselves, and a particular standout, for me at least, is the grandfather's song, Easy to Breathe. The vocal effect, while weird, makes it totally believable that Jack isn't the one singing. It perfectly explains the grandfather's character, and the chorus is just unforgettably catchy. I don't know, it's just a fucking jam, and honestly I can see myself adding it to my work playlist that I definitely use all the time, don't question it. The one exception to this, however, is the song that the mother sings. While yes, the song has a terrifying instrumental and vocal performance that is meant to emphasize the imposing nature of her character, the song heavily relies on the visuals that accompany it to explain its intentions. It's also the shortest song on the whole soundtrack if you don't count the climax, crying as a song. But overall, I feel like this is some of Jack's best work under the micropop banner to date. Songs like Baby Hotline, Oklahoma, or Buttercup might be fan favorites, but I feel like this surpasses it in terms of execution and theming. But enough about music opinions from the failed producer, let's get into visuals. So So you want to know how to make someone piss themselves? I have a fairly easy method. Just show them the pumpkin song and wait for them to scream bloody murder. Jack Stauber has always been an amazing visual artist. He works with fairly small budgets and manages to make some truly horrifying shit. While his abilities as an illustrator have yet to be seen in full swing, his claymations, which he does a lot of, have always been of the utmost quality. He combines claymation heads with people's bodies more often than not, which precludes the need to do any extremely complicated animation for limbs. While this is a cost-saving measure, don't get me wrong, it actually adds quite a bit of charm to Stauber's art style. It also adds an uncanny valley element to it, which can often contribute to me wanting to piss my pants whenever the characters do so much as lift a finger too fast. Now, this being a stop-motion short that's centered around horror, Jack Stauber used this uncanny element to its full advantage, making every scene feel unnerving. This, in conjunction to the horrific character design, gives the short this creepy pasta-esque vibe, which is made even more terrifying by the voices. Some of you might be saying, Kejjin, what about the dad? He's not that creepy. And I say to that, yeah, you're right. I guess the point was poorly.
That is the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
You know, the fact that clay has almost made me shit myself beyond the 7th grade art class says a lot about how fucking creepy this is. The lighting within the short perfectly matches the atmosphere, although it confuses the shit out of me to think how they managed to recreate the lighting on some of the clay and people at the same time. But whatever, let's just end this bitch. So in conclusion, Jack Stauber's released one of the best shorts I've seen in a very long time, and I think it deserves a lot more praise than it's getting at the moment. It's dark, it's beautifully executed, heartbreaking, and in my opinion, it's Jack Stauber's masterwork. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go, jack off.